Hello and welcome. If you saw last weekend's 24-hour stream by Nick's Crossing, then you might have already seen the newest locomotive in my N-scale fleet, and if not, no worries, I'm here to show it to you today. Now many of you know I'm a lifelong fan of the Bud rail diesel cars, also known as RDCs, Bud cars, or Bud liners. I tend to call them Bud cars. The evening commuter trains that dropped off passengers from the big city to my rural town were Reading RDCs, and they used to run as either 2 or 3 unit trains. And then last October, I got to ride a fall foliage excursion put on by Reading and Northern on a set of their Bud RDCs. I did that ride with JP Videos. You might remember that 3-part series. We rode from Pottsville to Jim Thorpe and back, and so it was quite natural that I wanted to find an RDC to add to my N-scale fleet. And it has been my goal to find a Kato RDC because you guys also know I like Kato as a brand for N-scale. And as far as locomotives go, these are hard to find. Fortunately, there was one waiting for me at Trains and Lanes in Easton, Pennsylvania, when I stopped by there the other week. And since nobody makes Reading and Northern RDCs in N-scale, I wasn't going to be fussy about the road name. I was just happy to find one. And this particular one happens to be number 376 from the Western Pacific Railroad. Western Pacific had 2 of these, 375 and 376. And this particular Bud is an RDC-2, which is a combination passenger and baggage car with seating for 70 passengers. So I'll read to you the history of the Western Pacific RDCs right off of Kato's website. It says in 1950, complications and budget problems with the Western Pacific forced the potential closure of a second train between Oakland and Salt Lake City, which would have left only their California Zephyr to handle all mail and stops between the 2 cities. An impossibility. Bud's RDCs were introduced just in time, and when it was tested running a 600-mile distance between Portola and Salt Lake City through the desert heat, Western Pacific saw the answer to its problems. 2 RDC-2s, later dubbed Zephyrettes, for their duty as supplemental cars to the California Zephyr. These 2 cars, following their introduction to service in September of 1950, would run 924 miles as an overnight express service, something that nobody had ever thought possible for the RDC. And generally, the RDCs do run shorter, rural-type routes. So the only track I have set up to run right now is this small switching layout. And this Bud car is about twice as long as the diesel switcher that I normally operate on this layout. So as you can imagine, this Bud car is not particularly happy running here. But since it is the only thing I have set up to run right now, I'm just going to do a really short run on this so you can get an idea of what it's like. So what are my plans for this Bud car? Well, it's not going to run much anytime soon because you can see it's not a huge fan of my small switching layout with its tight turns, elevation changes, and number 4 turnouts. In the spring, I hope to start my larger layout upstairs, which it'll be a lot happier running on. That layout is going to be geared towards longer passenger and freight trains. And so a couple people have asked me, am I going to repaint this as Reading and Northern? And the short-term answer is no. And the reason for that is this is an RDC-2, and Reading and Northern has 3 RDCs. They have 2 RDC-1s and an RDC-3. And what I would like to do, this is something of an ambitious project, and it's not going to happen anytime soon. now that I'm getting into 3D printing, what I would like to do is design the shell for an RDC-1 and then paint that new shell as Reading and Northern number 9168. That's the car that I spent the most time in on our fall foliage excursion, so obviously I have a real fondness for that car, but that project is definitely further out. But for today, I just wanted to introduce you to this bud. I am pretty happy with it despite its poor performance on this layout, and that's not a reflection on the locomotive itself. I test ran it at Trains and Lanes, it ran great, and I had it at Nick's house last weekend running for quite a while, and it was fantastic. So I'm quite happy with it. The detail on it's pretty nice. It has white and red lights on each end, and it turns on the appropriate set depending which direction the car is moving in. And on the prototype, they have an operator's cab on both ends of this. The engineer actually walks from one cab to the other so that he or she is always facing the direction of travel. And these can be run as single units or in multiples. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching.